Hello, Adora Alfie here, and welcome back to another Sandustry video. So this video is gonna be outside of my main series for Sandustry, which I think has like 4 episodes so far. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to be continuing that series, or if I'm going to be like restarting once the next update drops, right? But that's what I'm kind of waiting for that series. However, I do want to kind of like talk about like some things and show off some designs in this episode, I suppose, where I kind of want to talk about like how some blocks work, like filters, the drop the thing that you drop like burnt slag on, right? What was it called again? I think it's like a drop press or something like that. So we'll be going through like a few mechanics and like a few ways you can set things up. Obviously there's a billion solutions for how you can make things work, but I just want to talk about like what I've been doing and how like I've been using certain blocks that you might not be using in that way, right? And if you guys have any other things you'd like to share with everyone in the comments, or anything you'd like me to like kind of look into, just drop it down in the comments and I'll probably take a look at some point. I can't guarantee that, but I will try to. Okay, anyway, so today I kind of want to go through like two main processes. The first one is the whole process of using the shakers to turn wet sand into gold and slag. And the next bit is going to be turning burnt slag. So you burn slag with a flamethrower, right? And then turning that burnt slag into spores and gold again as well. So we'll be going through those two main things, but first I want to talk about wet sand to slag. So I have a basic setup over here, where I think I have like 12 shakers over here. I don't think you quite need 12 shakers, as long as you have like only one layer of wet sand coming in. I think like 10 shakers should be enough. And ideally you don't want like too much sand coming in, because then it's going to get through, right? However, I want to talk about how to make sure that nothing that you don't want getting through gets through, right? So first of all, there's a few things we need to do. The first bit is the filters for the input, right? So ideally you only want, well, not ideally, like you only want red sand coming in, and you want everything else to go elsewhere, right? So you could have other filters above this, but what you could also do is you could have like a filter over here that allows everything other than red sand. So how you set that up is, if you select the filter, and then you have block selected element allow everything else selected. By default it's going to be up here, but you want to select this, and then you want it to block wet sand. So if I place these down, the rest of these are already set up like that. And let me just get some like sand or something so I can show you what I mean. Any sand down here? Okay, so we have some regular sand here, right? So if I drop the regular sand here, it's going to filter through and fall through, right? So that's like the cool thing about this. And if I delete this, wait, oh wait, I'm not supposed to do that yet. I'm gonna put a block here. Boop. It'll only push the wet sand through, and everything else will fall. However, if you have like too much stuff, for example, if I have like a lot of let me get some more sand. If I have a lot of like wet sand, and then some regular sand falls on top of this, right? It's not getting filtered through anymore, because the way the filters work in Sandustry is it only checks like one block above it. So if I put some of the sand here, where it's not like a complete block, you see how it gets pulled down? So you can only kind of like check for one block above the filter. So in order to make sure that you're checking for everything above the filter, one thing you could do is you could just have a block like this, and so it'll get forced into this like bottleneck, where everything will get flattened down to one block, and it'll go through like this filter, right? If you want to make extra sure that only wet sand is getting through, you can also make a filter and select like the default option of allow only selected element through, and we only want wet sand going through, right? So if I select wet sand over here, and I put this filter here, like on the input for the shakers, right? You can actually use the filters vertically like this instead of like horizontally like a conveyor belt, and it'll act like kind of a gate, right? So now if I had this sand over here, it's not gonna go through, even if it gets let me remove some wet sand, right? Like it all fell down. It will not go through here ever. If I want to like show you guys a bit more of what I mean, let me just put some blocks here. Yeah, let me just put some blocks here, and whoops. Wait, I'll just put some regular conveyor belts here, right? So if I put some regular conveyor belts and I put some sand here, now there's nothing like filtering it downwards, but you can see that even if like this regular sand is over here, it's never going to go through. At worst, if you don't have filters down here for it to fall down, it'll just stop and it won't go into your system. So at least it'll prevent your system from getting like sand inside of your slag storage over here, right? So that's like one really nice way of preventing unwanted things from going into a system. So yeah, that's like step number one. Let me just move these. Whoops. So I want a filter. Filter everything other than wet sand. Oop. Okay. So the next bit is, for example, let's say you have a shorter version of this. Let me actually just show you what I mean. Okay, so let's say you want a more compact machine to do all your shaking for you, right? And if you turn this on right now, wait, let me just put like a block over here to make sure that this doesn't get through. And if I open this up, if you have like a block of sand, like a block tall of sand coming through, you're gonna get some wet sand going in through here as well because it's not able to process it fast enough, right? So if you want to kind of like process all of the slag and prevent this from happening, but still have a compact setup, what you could do is you can have a filter on the output for this. So what I mean by that is if you have a filter and then you set this to allow only selected element through, and then you set this up to be slag, and then you put the filter here. So it's like going off of this block, it can't go through here unless it like satisfies the condition on the filter. So now if I let this through, you can see that like it'll go and pile up over here, and then the wet sand kind of just stops over here, right? And it'll only go through if it gets turned into slag. So it'll slowly like sift through the wet sand, and once it becomes slag, it should go through. So it takes a bit of time, but like it's a easier way of doing it. You could also replace this block and then put a filter for slag up here. Boop. So that way, like even if it's at the top, it'll fall through. So it's a bit faster this way. But yeah, something like that to prevent any wet sand from going through. It's gonna be slower than like the 12 block long system I had earlier, but if you do this, you can kind of like make this more compact, and you can kind of split this up into multiple. There's like ways of doing splitters and stuff. When it comes to processing wet sand into slag, these are like kind of some tricks that I like to use myself. Okay, so let's move on to the next bit. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is slag, and then processing slag into burnt slag, and then burnt slag into spores and gold, right? So the way you do that, first of all, you have slag over here, right? You can turn this into burnt slag by using a flamethrower, which you can unlock from tools 1 over here. And then if you just like set this on fire, it will slowly catch on fire and then turn into burnt slag. Burnt slag is less dense than regular slag. So you saw that like all the slag in here was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks tall. And now it's not even like 2 blocks tall, right? So it's like a lot less space consuming than regular slag. And you use this to turn this into gold and spores. So the way you do that is you have a building called the Kinetic Slag press. If you build these, you can kind of see that there is a few things you need to first of all notice. You build it down here, but then there's this green area with a bunch of green arrows at the top, right? And if you take a bunch of slag and then drop it, boop, you can see that some of it turned into golden spores, and then some of it just stayed up here, right? The reason it's doing that is because it can only process so much slag at the same time. So if I drop the remainder, boop, you can see that this time there was only one slag that wasn't converted. Boop. And now you see that it all turned into regular slag, right? Not into regular slag, into spores and gold. So if I drop like just a little bit, boop, you can see that it turns properly, right? And one like thing that you could do is you could have a launcher just like be like, boop, dropping them in, right? However, if you have like too much going through the launcher at the same time, if I just put like a bunch of slag over here, right? You can see that it kind of like accumulates in a pile, or if it loses in momentum, it can start to accumulate, right? So there's a few ways you can kind of get rid of this issue. One of the things you could do is, boop, you could kind of have like something like a filter, because the filter only allows things to go through at a relatively slow pace. So if I put a filter over here, and then I put a regular conveyor belt over here, and then I put a launcher like this. Now this should like somewhat prevent a pileup because it'll split onto the filters, and the filters can only drop them at a certain speed. So this kind of like prevents a bit of accumulation, right? Another thing that you could do is you could also have kind of like a block over here, which what this does is it kind of makes the launcher worse at doing its job. So you can see that some of it just like falls back down, right? Especially if there's a lot of it. Some of it just like fall back down like this shaft over here. So this slows it down even more, and you can kind of use this to make a really compact system for making spores and gold. So that's like one way of doing it, right? So now that I've showed you how the mechanic works, let me just show you like a build that I like to use. So what I found kind of works for me is something like this, where I have two different Kinetic Slag presses, right? And I'm kind of using a splitter over here, but the way the splitter works is everything that's on the bottom layer goes to the one on the left, and everything on the top layer goes to stuff on the right. So it kind of like splits stuff based off of like how high it is, I guess. So if you don't have that much resources, it'll only go to the one on the left. However, the output over here is set up in a way that it makes it kind of inefficient, so it's not able to handle like one launcher worth of stuff, right? Like the way I showed you earlier. So let me just set fire to like this pile of slag. You can also like have interesting systems where you just have like the presses right below the slag storage, right? That kind of works as well. But yeah, let's just get all this slag burnt though. Okay, let me just get more slag coming in as well. So you can see that the burnt slag falls through the floor, which is set up with filters, and then it gets picked up by either one of these two, depending on how high up it is in this pile, right? So it kind of works as a splitter, and then it goes over here, and this launcher, because it doesn't have enough like headroom to throw stuff, like you can see the other splitters over here, right? They kind of like throw stuff above them. Since there's not enough headroom, it's not gonna like actually output one belt perfectly. It's gonna output less than one belt, and because that it's kind of like just trickling through slag, right? And the filter kind of like slows it down even more. And this allows you to kind of have a system where you can really like just limit how much slag is being processed at a time. And then after that, you kind of want to go over another filter and then filter out the gold from the spores. Now, one thing you kind of have to watch out for here is if you aren't like draining the spores fast enough, it can get backed up and have like you can have like a pile of spores that goes above the drop presses, right? And that'll cause the slag to fall on the spores and not actually hit the drop press. So you kind of want to be careful of that. But you also want to make sure that you're filtering everything through properly enough. So if you have like a longer filter over here, that should prevent that from happening. But yeah, but by doing that, you can kind of have a splitter that works over here, and also have it actually like processing it like a bit at a time, because like it's really hard to get a lot of throughput with the slag processing, right? Oh wait, let me just delete this block so you can get a bit more of the spores going through. Hopefully that should be good enough to handle all of the gold. And yeah, that's basically how it works. Oh, unlike with wet sand and dry sand, gold is heavier than spores, so gold will naturally like fall down anyway. So like you don't have to limit it to one block. Limiting to one block makes it a lot safer, but you don't necessarily have to do it. You could just like leave it at 2 blocks like I did over here. So the next thing I want to talk about is how to make splitters in the game. There's like a few ways to do it. Like one really easy way that I've seen people do it is like this, where you just have like two different loaders like splitting it into launchers splitting into different directions, right? However, there's like a problem with this setup where like if you have the input coming from one side, it's going to get prioritized by the one on the right. So this is like one way of doing it. If you have like a lot of stuff like in a container like this, it's not that bad, right? But it does have its limitations. The other way that I saw on the Discord server, I think like it was someone called Rethnor who was like making this. I'm not sure if other people have been making it too, but like that's who I saw making it on the Discord server, right? They have basically a launcher that goes up, and then right at the top you put a block. And if you do that, you see that like everything's just falling off, right? It gets to the top and then kind of just drops off. And if you put like a conveyor belt on either side, it kind of just splits it between both them. It's not like 100% even, but it's like a bit more even than the other design, right? So you could kind of use this to split stuff. And for example, like over here where we have the slag like thing, right? With the two different slag presses, you could kind of have this too if you want to like split it off into like multiple parts and stuff. However, I think that's everything I wanted to cover in this video. If you have any other questions about how other game mechanics work and things like that, let me know in the comments and I'll try and answer them. There are a lot of people that play this game a lot more than I do on the Discord server for the game, so asking there is probably a really good bet too. Probably better than asking me, honestly. But I will try my best to answer questions as well. If you have anything you'd like to share with everyone, let me know as well in the comments, and maybe I'll make a video about that in the next one. However, I'm going to be wrapping up. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!